So we are recording and live.
Good evening, and welcome to the Newburyport Historical Commission virtual meeting of the 12th of May, 2022. And please be aware that this Zoom meeting, like all such virtual meetings, is being recorded. In fact, I should mention that if you ever want to see a recording of an earlier meeting, you can do that on the City of Newburyport website on the Historical Commission's page. There may be a public comment period tonight, so I'll review the rules for that. Ordinarily, the commissioners have the audio enabled, and during public comment, one member of the public at a time will be unmuted on our end, and of course, applicants and their representatives will also be unmuted for their presentation. Now, if you wish to make a public comment, you must raise your hand to be recognized. The way you do that is using the controls in the Zoom application. So check out, if you're not familiar with it, look around your screen or on your laptop or your iPad, whatever you've got, to find the little function that raises your hand. And remember to lower it after you've spoken. As per usual, please identify yourself, name and address, as is a standard procedure for public meetings. Now, if you're on a telephone line for any chance, use *9 to raise or lower your hand and *6 to mute and unmute yourself. I should have said, if I didn't, that we unmute you on our end. You also have to unmute yourself on your end to be heard. So I'll take a roll call of the commissioners and we can get started. So starting in alphabetical order here, Andrew Bernhardt.
I'm here.
Okay, thank you, Andrew. Malcolm Carnwath, I think I saw you join. Did I? Maybe I didn't. Okay, we'll skip Malcolm for the moment. Mark Cindrone.
Present.
Okay, Christopher Fay.
Here.
Okay, Joe Morgan.
Here.
Okay, and the chair, Glenn Richards, is obviously here. And I'll make a note here that Mr. Conrath, at least not yet, is here. If he was supposed to join, so we'll see what happens. One more look here. Okay, so let's begin. The first item on today's agenda is a demo delay application for 30 Carter Street. I believe Haley McLean is the applicant and also will be presenting. So Haley, I see you in the attendee list. Can we enable her audio, Caitlin? Yep. Okay, and you've got your hand up. You don't need you can lower your hand. We know it. We know you. All right. So, and we now hear you, Haley. So,
Okay,
let me just introduce this. Now, you are the homeowner as well as the applicant. Is that correct?
I am. Yes. Thank
Okay.
you. And I'm also currently in London for work. So I'm sorry if you hear background noise because the internet in my room wasn't as good as the lobby. So I'm downstairs.
Oh, okay. And you didn't bring your headset. Huh? All right.
I am on my headset also, so I apologize for that.
Actually, you sound pretty good. So you sound good enough for us to go. And so do you know if your architect was able to join?
I've messaged a few times. I don't think he will, but I'm hoping that I'm able to. So I'm an interior designer. I'm hoping that I'm able to answer some of the questions you
may.
have. Okay. Hopefully all.
Okay, so just since, just for both your benefit and any new members and anyone else, I'll very briefly review the how we go through this. Okay, so this is a demo delay application. So what the commission first does is determines in which of three categories your structure falls. It's either not historically significant, which I don't think will be the case. It could be historically significant and considered for preservation, or historically significant but not considered for preservation. Now, if it's determined to either be not significant or not considered for preservation, then that's the end of your visit here and you can go on your merry way. If it is considered for preservation, we take a look at your plans, your demo plan and construction plan and all that. And well, first a demo plan, and we decide if the house is what's preferably preserved. Did I get that out of order? Hang on a second. Let me check my, all this time I've been doing this, I still sometimes get confused. So it's and consider for preservation. Okay, yeah. After the vote on consider for preservation, there is the demolition plan review, and then we say it's preferably preserved. That means a 1-year demolition delay is imposed. However, what often happens, Haley, is that we review your plans, and either we can approve them tonight, or we can improve them with modifications that we all agree to, or you can come back with some modifications if there's something that we object to and don't want to approve them tonight, and so on. So
okay.
You'll see that how all that works in a minute. So the first order of business is to determine if it's historically significant and consider for preservation. The house is listed as contributing on the district data sheet, so that's usually kind of a slam dunk for it being historically significant. Does anyone, any commissioner, have a question or a comment about that? If not, or someone can make a motion that it's historically significant and considered for preservation.
I'll make a motion that the building is historically significant.
Okay, is there a second? I assume you mean historically significant and considered for preservation, Mark?
I thought the first thing was to determine whether it was historically significant, but
well,
and I'm happy to add considered for preservation.
Yeah, if it, I know it is confusing because it's a three-way decision. It's not, which makes it confusing. It's either not historically significant, and considered for preservation, or historically significant but not considered for preservation, which means do it. You can demolish it. We don't care. All right. So anyway, the motion is that it's historically significant and considered for preservation. I'm still waiting for a second.
Seconded.
I will second it, Andrew.
Okay, I heard Joe first, Andrew, so I'll put him down.
Okay.
So let's do the voting here. 1 second. Get myself queued up here. Okay, Andrew Bernhardt, your vote?
Yes.
Okay. Mark Sandrone?
Yes.
Okay. Christopher Fay?
Yes.
Thanks, Chris. And the chair is yes. So what that means is, Haley, that we have a public hearing at which we review your demo plan and all of that. So let me just here.
Excuse me, Chair. This is Joe.
Yeah,
I'll vote yes on that also.
I'm sorry?
I'll vote yes on that also. This is Joe.
Yes, on what?
Well, you didn't call my name on the roll call.
I could have sworn I did.
That's okay. Let's just say that I voted yes.
Okay. My apologies if I missed it.
Not a problem.
Okay, so
And should I jump in and also say that I vote yes?
Oh, sure. If you
Glenn,
wish.
hey, Glenn, I'm sorry.
I do.
Yes, Chris.
Glenn?
Yes.
I'm just wondering if we could ask the applicant to mute their microphone.
Sure. Yep. Let me
Thank
see.
you. Just because that background noise is tough to.
Okay, although they will need to speak in just a minute. So we have the demo. Was there a sheet, Caitlin, that just showed the demo? I can't recall. These are the plans. Looks like this is showing the proposed view. I didn't see. Was it so there wasn't anything that showed the actual demo that was used for calculating the percentage of demo and all that. Is that right, Caitlin?
Well, the proposal, Glenn, is to add the 2 dormers on either side. There's also changes in the window fenestration, as you can see shown on the proposed elevations.
Right. Okay.
And you can also see down here the existing wall area, and then the total proposed changes in the wall area, is well under the 25% threshold.
Okay. All right. Well, given that, then, even though the ordinance calls it a demo plan review, but it's kind of an overall plan review at this point. Haley, why don't you unmute yourself, and I'd like to give you an opportunity to briefly explain what it is you're doing or would like to do.
Okay, sure. So So I grew up in Amesbury. My dad grew up in Newburyport. My mom grew up in Amesbury. This is my first house in the area, so this is a little bit of a learning curve. I bought the house in November, but the idea is that I really just want to make it beautiful and feel like it's native to the landscape. So just kind of bring it back. So first I want to strip the vinyl, then I'll strip what's under the vinyl, which looks like some kind of roofing material, but does also look like there's clapboards underneath the original one. So what I can't restore, I'll replace, but hopefully the idea is that we'll restore as much as we can. And then in terms of making it livable, the person who lived here previously was 102 or maybe 103, and unfortunately she passed away, and she didn't have any children or anything, so this went to the trust. It definitely felt like when I got it, it was a 103-year-old woman who lived in it. There was no washer and dryer. The kitchen was very small, and it hasn't been updated properly in a very long time. So what I'm trying to do is keep it as close to its natural state as possible while making it like livable for today's life. Mm-hmm. And to do that, I've done probably like 5 or 6 renditions on this with my architect in terms of the stair location, and that's actually what's driving this whole thing. Mm-hmm. I don't, this is my first time in one of these meetings, so I don't know if I should just point out all the wrong things I'm doing, like the things that you guys are like probably trying to critique here, but that's what I'm going to do. So the right hand, if you're looking at the east elevation, which is the first drawing, mm-hmm. the right hand side dormer fits all the requirements. It was passed by ZBA because the right hand side is also like very much on the property line. So that was all fine. Everybody in the neighborhood has, that's significant to this build, has looked at it, has approved it, has seen my interior plans and my exterior plans, and they've met me and they know the ultimate goal. So that was okay. And then what we're talking about today is the one on the left-hand side. And mm-hmm. I'm just going to tell you where it doesn't meet the goals, right? So you can see how it says 1.3, but that's not mm-hmm. 1.3 from the facade of the rest of that wall. It's 1.3 from like the cornice, right? So it's actually like, you can see how I don't know what you guys call that, but I would call that the storyboard. The storyboard is stacked, right? And it should be, I think, 1.5 feet or maybe 3, depending on the other side. I'm not sure, but it should be further back than it is. Right. And that's what we're asking for permission on, because that is the only location that allows me to have access to the 3rd floor that's on a pull down that shuts off access to the bedrooms. Because when you have the pull down, it's like a hallway on that 2nd floor. Mm-hmm. And then you can no longer access anything. So if you're up there if it's an office space or whatever, you're blocking off emergency egress from the 2 back bedrooms.
Yeah, so I think I read that in your memo. Okay.
So that's really the only goal, is to be able to have a functional, I guess you can call it 3rd floor and 2nd floor at the same time. And in terms of the basement, I'm no longer going to utilize the basement as it is. I'm just going to have a smaller footprint down there. And I'll have some kind of hatch. I don't know if you have the interior. You do, I think, on page 15. So it'll just be like a hatch access to the basement level.
Yeah, the interior is actually outside our purview.
Okay.
I noticed numbers on the windows. Are you planning to replace windows?
Yes. So the windows are, you saw the elevations. Those are the photos that you're looking at now are just from like the listing. They're not my photos. I took them off the website. They're just not good. Most of them are broken by now, and I am planning to replace them. I'm hoping to replace them with Marvin windows, wood Marvin 2/2. If you guys don't like that, I can do 6/6, whatever you want. But wood, it really depends on lead time. I'll either do that or Anderson, depending on what I can get. Mm-hmm. There are some changes in terms of where I located them, just so that the interior would make sense. I know that you said the interior is out of your realm, but that's why some of them have shifted to just accommodate bed sizes and TVs and sofas and new location upstairs. But I did try to be sympathetic in terms of symmetry, as well as my neighbors. So for the majority on the north elevation, their house has a lot of a fair amount of windows on the south side, right? Because it's the south side, so you want the light. And those windows that I'm removing look directly into their house. I'm happy to put them back if you feel like this elevation is unattractive, but I just was trying to be, it is, I understand that it is a lot of wood, right? So I'm happy to put them back, but that's why I sort of did that.
Okay. And just one more question about the windows, Haley.
Yep.
One of the things, well, maybe I'll hold off till a little bit later. All right, I think we understand what you're doing. And just to clarify my comment about the interior, even though we don't control what you do in the interior, we understand, what you mean about interior changes very often will drive changes in the fenestration, changes in window placement outside. So, we understand that. And I'll have questions that I'll hold to later because I want to first allow, is there anything else? I think we have a pretty good idea of what you're doing here. Is there anything you feel that it's important to add before I invite public comment?
I'm not, should I discuss how the west elevation looks? Because there's a fair amount of change on that one.
Yeah, that's the rear of the house.
Yeah. So it's my understanding that if I stay with under 36 inches above grade for the deck, I guess you can call it, that it's without of kind of discussion. So I did try to do that. The exterior doors, like the access, remain unchanged. The front facade remains unchanged entirely. And then the back facade, which faces my neighbor, and I did my neighbor, they're not on my street. I'm sorry, I'm forgetting the name of the street behind me, but I called them and I spoke to her and explained what I'm trying to do. And she was very happy for me to renovate this house and also fix the fence, which is split. But the reason I'm doing the windows in the back like this is because I closed off so many windows on the north elevation that I did feel like I was getting a little bit claustrophobic, and that was like the most space I had between neighbors because of course it's tight, right? So on the south elevation, I'm also quite tight to my neighbor there as well.
Okay. I was gonna say, okay. All right. We'll have some more questions for you. Why don't you temporarily mute your mic, and we'll have a public comment period. I'll formally open a period of public comment. If members of the public would like to make a statement, please raise your hand so we know. By the way, Haley, you can lower your hand. I actually see two Haley McLeans. I'm not sure what's going on with that, but whatever.
I have two Haley McLeans because I'm sorry, I'm traveling and my headset doesn't actually plug into my computer. It only plugs into my phone.
Got it.
Sorry.
Got it. Okay. Okay, see two hands. The first one I spotted was Thomas Goldejohn. Would you like to unmute yourself, Thomas, and we will take your comment?
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Tom Goldejohn, 64 Federal Street, co-president of the Newburyport Preservation Trust. I appreciate what this individual is trying to do with the house to try to bring it back, and it sounds like a very positive intention. I do have some concerns. I am a little concerned about the I guess you would call it an abnormality of the different pitches in the dormers. At least on the design, it really looks odd. I guess is it just looks odd on the pictures. Maybe not in person. Maybe it's a smaller dormer than it appears in the design, but it just looks odd when you look at the front elevation. The The other thing is the fenestration. I guess I just am confused about the fenestration. The house is a house. It's a historic house. It probably had much more traditional placement of the windows with some logic to it. This appears to be just to try to accommodate a neighbor, at least in part. So I just would encourage the commission to look very closely at this fenestration. Just, again, I have to say it looks odd. It would appear as though you would want it more traditional and in keeping with the rest of the street. I guess on this one, I would encourage a site visit with the plans and kind of go slow on this project until it's more clear and a better way is found to address the windows and perhaps the dormer. I don't know. But that's pretty much it. I'm not opposed to it, but I think there's just lots of things that need to pull together better for this to be a really good project. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Tom. Let's see, there was another hand there, Stephanie Nikitich. You want to make a comment?
Thank you, Chairman Richards. So I think that Mr. Colton has said a lot of what I would say. I actually hadn't looked at this application before logging on tonight. Carter?
Pardon the interruption. You forgot to give your name and address.
93 High Street.
Thanks.
I used to be Stephanie Johnson, 36 Carter Street. This is my old neighborhood, and it's also a house I owned there. Was also my first house. It's a lovely street, and I hope you will take Tom Coltajohn's request into account to do a site visit. I do think what's happening to the windows is confusing, and the dormers are incongruent. They are lopsided, and they're not really what I would consider appropriate dormers for that style of house. And so I just see one of those traditional small houses, not too small, on Carter Street being changed so that it doesn't look like the house it was anymore. And I think there might be better ways to achieve what the applicant wants. And I agree with Tom. Please do a site visit. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. I'm not seeing any other hands, so I'll close the public comment period. And let me turn to my fellow commissioners and see if anyone has, first of all, has a question or clarification for the applicant, Ms. McLean. Anyone? Andrew, I see your hand up.
Yeah, I took a walk around the neighborhood, and my initial concern is that most of the homes have a small footprint and they're quite close to one another. So the dormers and the design, any way to limit that wall appearance, something that goes straight up. I guess that's my concern with the second dormer, is that it comes further down the roof and you have more of a wall appearance. And I'm just concerned just that whole street, if everybody did such a thing, I think it would take away from the neighborhood. That's my initial feeling.
Mm-hmm. Okay. All right. Thanks, Andrew. Anyone else have a comment or question? Mark, Sandro?
Yeah, thank you. It was mentioned that the vinyl clapboards might be removed, which I wholeheartedly support, but I wanted to know what the plan exactly was. Were these clapboards going to be replaced by wood clapboards? What is the plan here? The second question is, I have a little bit of difficulties understanding how the windows are going to be set up on the north elevation. I do understand that it is a neighborly thing to do not to peer into other people's homes, but this house probably had a set of windows at some point that made sense architecturally. I'm having a little trouble, and I was hoping that the applicant could clarify a little better what she was planning to do with the windows. Also, it'd be nice to know more specifically what the treatment for those windows are. She seems to have several options, but it would be nice to narrow those down. And then finally, I'll echo my colleague in stating that the dormers really don't fit in the structure. They are jarring, they are awkward. They do not make any sort of architectural sense. And so I have a problem with that. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Mark. Hang on a second, just taking some notes here. Okay, Joe, any thoughts from you? Or has it all been said?
Well, I don't know. I don't have a strong feeling about it. I see that nothing is being really proposed on the front elevation, the street elevation. It seems like that's being preserved. I mean, I'm looking for sort of character defining features on the building, and I'm not knowing where to look. But I don't have a problem with the dormers at all. I understand that's a functionally driven requirement, and they seem to be far enough back that you're not going to really see them from the street that much. I think that the fenestration on the two long elevations, I could see how that might be a little bit worrisome. There doesn't seem to be really any correspondence between one side of the building and the other. However, it is a very narrow building, so it's as I understand it from the district data sheets, it's called a side hall Italian, so it's not a symmetric interior layout, presumably. It's a side hall, and the stair is somewhere on that one side that requires third floor access. So you would expect that it would be somewhat of an unbalanced, a composition on either side. I don't know. I suspect it's a very complicated interior layout because of the narrow frame of the building. I mean, if someone could point out some historical, actually relevant features of this building that need to be preserved in its significance, as we've determined to be significant, I would look for those arguments, but otherwise I just don't have anything to say. I think I would not object to any of the work that's being proposed. So that's my point.
Okay. Thanks. And I see Malcolm has joined us. Malcolm, have you been here for the? Did you catch the beginning of this here agenda item? You with us, Malcolm? I see you're muted. Going once, going twice. Sold, I guess. I'm not sure if he hears me or what. Anyway, yeah, well, it seems a lot of people are concerned about the dormers. So, Ms. McLean, that was the first thing I noticed too. Now, it's interesting, when we look at this sheet we're looking at, and you look at the east elevation, the dormers seem quite prominent. On the other hand, Joe is quite correct that it's a little misleading because they are set, that's a flattening, so you don't really see it. That's not how you're going to see it, especially from the sidewalk. They're set about almost 13 feet back from the front of the house on Carter Street. So they won't look as prominent as they do here. However, the fact that they're so asymmetrical does raise a concern for me. And Caitlin, could you go to the second floor plan, please? I think it's slide 15. Yeah. Okay. So looking at this, it's my understanding that if you look at this is the second floor and third floor plan, and the dark lines kind of represent where those dormers are on the third floor plan. So you can see how on the right hand side, it's the slightly wider but smaller dormer does not go. The wall of the dormer does not extend all the way out to the plane of the lower wall. It's set back the appropriate amount by the what's considered the guidelines, but it does on the other side. And now I understand the need for that stairway to get up to the attic level without that hatch system you described. Now, can you go to 14 here? I think that's the elevations. Yeah. So is that, no, that's not it either. Maybe it's, where is it? Let's see, what's 16? Okay, here it is. Looking at this, it looked to me like you would have enough headroom without bringing that left-hand dormer out. In other words, you could make the roof pitch the same as the right-hand one and not bring it out quite so far, and you'd still have enough headroom for that for the stairway. Because Caitlin, can you just zoom in on that upper left-hand part of the drawing there? It shows that, yeah, because there's that 4'10" measurement that's showing there. Of course, that's from the floor up above, but the actual stairs are considerably below that. So, just kind of roughing it out from going by that 6'8" dimension there from the floor level to the ceiling and the attic. If you go, you can see that it gets a little bit lower when you hit the top step. But if you had the same type of dormer on that side, you'd have, it seems to me, you'd have plenty of headroom. Wouldn't go out. If you went out, I guess you'd have a little bit of a notch there on the stairway. I'm not sure if you had any room to bring the stairway either in slightly or, yeah. It's hard for me to say how much of a problem it would be. That's why I was hoping the architect could be here to go through the details. But that's really the only thing I wanted to talk about as far as the architecture, because I think I agree with my commissioners that it creates an awkward appearance to have it so out of balance. On the other hand, it is 13 feet back, so it's a question of how. On the plans, it looks really like it hits you right in the face, but in the reality might not be so bad. So I do want to talk about that. And I think it was Mark Sandrone mentioned about getting some specifics. And I should explain that the roof line change is what triggered you coming before the Historical Commission because of what they call a roof line change in the case of a demolition less than 25%. However, as part of our review, we can review and comment on the entire plan, the exterior anyway, and we don't have to okay the plan unless a quorum of us is satisfied that it won't detract materially from the historical value of the house or historical characteristics of the house, whatever. That's something that Commissioner Joe Morgan was talking about. I agree with him that there's not, to answer your question, Joe, what's the historical thing or things we're trying to preserve? To me, it's the overall proportion and look of the place. And in some ways, Ms. McLean, you're improving that by removing vinyl siding and going back to wood. It'll give a more historical and correct appearance by putting in correct windows. I'm not sure what's there now. On those photos, Caitlin, on the earlier slides, did we have a photo of the front, the Carter Street view? What's going on up there? Like maybe you just passed. Yeah, that one. So it looks like 2/2, which when was this built? Does anyone do you remember when this was built? 1855, 1870. Well, it may have originally been built with 2/2. So anyway, those are the kinds of questions. Can you unmute yourself, Haley? Hope you don't mind me just calling you by your first name there,
Sure.
and talk about one of the. Can you talk to us about your back and forth with the architect on those dormers as to why they had to be so different?
Sure, definitely. So we actually these have been reduced multiple times. So the original plan was to, if you go, sorry, can you still hear me?
Yeah, we can hear you.
Okay, so sorry, something weird went black. If you go to maybe page 9. Nope, sorry. The front facade of when you can see the south elevation and the front of the building. Maybe it's the first photo. Yeah, page 6. So the original one, like you can see that flat roof on the left-hand side.
Mhm.
The original plan was to actually like carry the highest point left, so it would be like a full L. But that just felt too extreme. And that definitely was a roofline change. It would create a whole new roofline in the back. So we decided against that. Because there's a secondary stair. There's 2 stairs in this building, one that was added after the fact and one that was like typical Italian side entry, which is on the right-hand side, right in front of the door. So we were going to use the second entrance that's been added for whatever reason. Because also this house was a 2-family house. It's listed as a 2-family house. I'm trying to restore it back to a single-family house. It's my understanding that I could push for a 2-family, but it just doesn't. I'm not going to do that. And so in that case, I also don't need that second stair because that second stair would allow for the 2-family because it gives full access to the second floor without entry into the first floor at all because there's like a vestibule right on that where the ramp is.
Right.
So that's coming out. What I was trying to do was maintain the original staircase, which I'm actually might not even be able to do considering how much I'm technically changing of the house. I might have to bring it up to code there as well. So that's what the plans reflect. I'm sorry, I can't remember the sequence of who asked what, but someone asked about, I'm going to just go from what I remember. Someone asked about the exterior siding.
Yeah.
And the plan is to remove the vinyl siding. I understand that it is obviously being a cost benefit to leave it, but it goes against the grain for me. So I'm taking that down. Unfortunately, underneath that, there is this weird roofing material underneath it. So I also have to take that down. And then it seems as though in the portion that we sort of test sampled, that there is original clapboards. And the goal is to get it all back to that. I cannot promise if that will happen only because I haven't ripped all of the siding off, right? The first layer and then the second layer. But no matter what, once it happens, it will be wood clapboards. I would like, so that's that. I think the second question after that was about the discrepancy around the symmetry of the dormers. Or it may have been the windows, but I'll get to the windows in a second. So the dormers, I spent a lot of time on this actually, and I walked on both sides of the street. You never once see both dormers in the way that the facade drawings presents itself. It's just because you might see them if you're like one of us and you're like really going to there to scrutinize it. Because obviously I did that, but they are set far back. And originally I wanted them to be bigger so that the front of the house could be useful as like a proper office or even maybe like another just lounge area. But it just felt too imposing. So we pulled it back. Some of the other houses have twisted it and made the entry they took it off the side and made it on the on the driveway side, and they considered that, but it didn't feel natural to this particular house. But when it came to the dormers, I walked around the neighborhood. I walked around all the neighborhoods. I pulled the dormers pretty far back. A lot of the houses have them very close to the front, and we're not doing that. So even I think if you are standing directly across the street, you won't necessarily feel the difference between the two. On the left-hand side, which is the one that's actually the one that's really the most imposing in terms of historical requirements, the left-hand side, I'd be very happy to match on the right-hand side. However, it's higher, right? So I was just trying to stay within the requirements and keeping it low so that you didn't have that very strong, imposing blank wall. I understand that now I'm going to switch over into the windows, because I think that was another question. So on the other side, which is on the north side, it becomes a pretty like solid wall, right? And I think that was one of the first points I pointed out, just to pretend that I didn't know that. I did it knowingly. For my neighbors, one, but also because I felt as though it wasn't particularly noticeable as you drive from the water up the street. If you guys feel differently about that, there's absolutely no reason why I can't add windows back in there based on the interior layout. I'm very happy to do it. It flanks the stove. It's fine. If that's what you guys would like to see, I have zero problem putting it back in there. It was really more so for the neighbors, and I just didn't feel like it was particularly necessary. Like I said, because of the walking and the driving view of that side. I think it's page 12.
So sorry.
Hi, I'm sorry. I'm actually on a business call.
I understand.
Do you need me
are
to?
you staying on time?
I checked out today. It's 414.
If you've already checked out, unfortunately, the space is closed.
Okay. Yeah, it's really convenient. All right. Well, 2 minutes. Thank you. Sorry guys, I'm getting kicked out of here. It's been a very inconvenient day.
Yeah, I'm sorry. So sorry to hear that.
Let me try to move somewhere else. But was there something else that I needed to, just in terms of historical relevance of the architectural detailing? As of right now, all of the corbels, all of the everything, the cornices are all covered in vinyl. Everything's rotted for the most part. And my intention is to replace with new, if not found. So I'm trying to go to Northeast Architectural to see if there's anything particularly relevant to this date and time. I know within the requirements of the existing space, it might lend itself to be difficult to find something, but I do want it to be similar, if not exact. And I haven't touched on this concrete staircase, which is also awful. I'd like to bring this up to a new level. I don't want to just do wood on wood. I would like it to be, I mean, I know it's not necessarily particularly inside of your realm of things that we need to talk about tonight, but I do want to restore that to something more attractive than what we're seeing here.
Okay. And actually this photo we're looking at now does show how that kind of northeast facing side is kind of fenestration is all the way in the back, probably because of that stairway that's in the front of the house. At any rate, well, for the sake of time, you know what I'm thinking, Haley, why don't we do this? First of all, is anyone living in the house now?
Oh, no.
It's empty?
Definitely not. Yeah.
Would you like to, well, will you be around maybe this coming weekend sometime to meet with us on site so we can actually look at the property and ask these questions and so on? This, the site visit that was referenced by a couple of the public commenters.
Would you be so happy for you guys to go? Unfortunately, I'm here for work in London. I'm doing an interior design project here in London. I have to stay here until Wednesday, but I could check with my architect and my builder and my structural engineer or anybody else that you would like to meet, or my mom. I don't know. She would go. She's very happy to go. She's like super involved. Anybody really, unfortunately, except for me. And I definitely want you guys all to be happy with the plan. I tried really hard to stay within requirements and still make it workable, but I don't want to make anybody uncomfortable, especially someone who's already been living in the neighborhood. And this feels like I'm sorry, I think you lived at 91 High Street. I'm sorry, I'm forgetting your address.
Yeah, I know.
Okay. And my whole goal is to do this properly. I want to do it right. So
well, here's
I don't
what
want
I would
anybody
suggest.
to be uncomfortable.
Yeah, we get it. and we appreciate that spirit, and a couple of us have commented on that. Why don't we do this? If the commission is on board and would agrees with this idea, why don't we continue this hearing? We won't take a vote tonight, final vote on your plans and everything. We'll set up a site visit, and if one of your can you give us you can give you know how to get in touch with Caitlin Sullivan, who's the in the planning office, who or anyone in the planning office. You can give the contact information of either, could be your mom, could be whoever you'd like to meet with us, and maybe this weekend we can take a look around the property, and actually, ideally, if the architect could do it with us, that would be wonderful. But
yeah, Caitlin and Al are on a couple emails together.
Okay.
I think he's responded to a couple questions that she and also Jennifer
Okay.
had. He's super competent. He's
Yeah.
very, very accommodating to whatever kind of questions you might have.
Yeah.
So
Would
I'm
that
sure
be? Would you be okay with continuing it to our next meeting? That would be. Let me grab my calendar here real quick. That would be the 26th of May, 2 weeks from today.
Sorry, was that a question for me or Caitlin?
Yeah, for you, Haley. Can you come back in 2 weeks and we can try to get it all wrapped up then, if possible?
I'm not going to say no to that. Yeah, I definitely
Okay.
All right, make it happen.
Would someone on the commission care to make a motion that we continue till the 26th of May?
I'd like to make a motion that we continue to the next meeting on May 26th. Chris.
Thank you, Christopher Fay. 5/26. Is that seconded? Is that Mark seconded?
Chair Richards, this is Joe. I just wanted to say we have not voted on whether the property is preferably preserved. Would we defer that vote also to the next time?
Yeah. Yes.
Okay.
That's why we're continuing. So the public hearing is actually continued. It's not completed.
Understood.
And we'll take that vote when we've completed the public hearing. Yeah, good question. Glad you're paying attention to the to the rules here. I think I heard. So it was. Now I lost my track. I think I heard Mark seconded. Who made the motion?
Mark.
Chris, I did. Chris.
That's right. Thank you, Chris. Okay, let's take a quick vote on that. Andrew, this is just a vote to continue this hearing to 2 weeks from today.
Yes.
Andrew? Okay, thank you. Mark Cindrone?
Yes.
Okay, thanks. Chris Fay?
Yes.
Thank you. Joe Morgan?
Yes.
Thank you. And I'm a yes too. So what that means, Haley, is that we'll come back. We'll meet in the meantime. Take a look at the place and the plans. Hopefully, discuss it with either the architect or someone who's more or less familiar. Sounds like that may or may not be your mother, whatever. And we'll try to do that this weekend or sometime between now and 2 weeks from now. And Caitlin will put you back on the agenda for the 26th, and we'll see if we can't get it done.
Okay, thanks. And then so what happens after, I'm sorry, I'm super green. What happens after that?
If we if we vote to approve your plans, then you go to whatever your next step is. You might have to ask Caitlin probably you can, go ahead and, get, your permits for demo building, whatever, once those plans are approved. Sounds like you already got approval from the ZBA for that upward extension of the nonconformity.
On the right-hand side,
Yeah.
on the north side,
Yeah.
that's all fine.
Yeah. So you've jumped through that hoop already. So this should be the last city commission approval you need. The only other approvals will be the usual approvals from the building commissioner and that kind of thing.
Okay, all right. Sounds good. So I guess I'll just connect with Caitlin on email from here on out and decide.
And
okay.
I think what I'll do is I'll kind of summarize some of the concerns members of the commission had. We'll get those to you just so nothing gets forgotten. That way, it'll improve our chances of having everything ready for 2 weeks from now.
Okay, great. Thank you guys so much for reviewing. I honestly really appreciate the feedback.
Yeah, you're welcome. And thanks for your patience, and see you in a couple of weeks. And
okay.
Okay. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye. Well, that was an interesting one, the first international hearing we've been part of. But so we'll continue that and hopefully get that resolved. Next is part of a DCOD advisory review that began last meeting. This was 22 Market Street. They needed a report for the ZBA, I believe. They need is the permit granting authority on this. I wrote or drafted, I should say, a historical report. You see it on your screen there. Hopefully you had a chance to review it. Did anyone have any corrections, changes, anything that stuck out as being not good? Joe, I see a hand up. Did you want to?
Oh, I'm sorry. That was from the last
okay.
call. I still have a question regarding that, but I'll defer to I'll defer to next week then.
You mean in 2 weeks?
In 2 weeks, yeah.
Okay. If there are no corrections or comments, the chair would be happy to hear a motion to approve the draft report, and I'll give the planning office a final version. It'll be the same text, just with things like the submitted date will be present and that kind of thing.
This is Joe Morgan. I move that we approve the advisory report for 22 Market Street.
Okay, thank you, Joe. Is there a second?
And this is Andrew, I second.
Okay, thank you. Okay, Joe Morgan, your vote?
Yes, sir.
Okay, Chris Fay, your vote?
Yes.
Andrew Bernhardt, your vote?
Yes.
Mark Cendrone?
Yes.
Okay, and the chair obviously is okay with it. So Caitlin, I'll send you the final version, if not tonight, probably tomorrow. Thank you, board. Final thing here is, I'm sure if I look over in the attendees, I'll see folks from, I see Brad Kutcher there and Nick Cracknell is over there. Okay, so the last one is reviewing 344 Merrimack Street. We heard from Nick last week on this, and we had a site visit last Saturday, and it was a very active and ambitious one. Sorry, Nick, if we made you a little crazy that day. And as a result, I see you have submitted a list. I guess that's what we're looking at now. This is from May 9th, so thank you for turning us around quickly and providing, as best I can determine, I didn't go over it with a fine-tooth comb, but it looked like you captured what we talked about on site. So let me first ask I'll let you speak in just a minute, either Nick or I assume you'll be talking. Before I turn over to the commission, go ahead, Nick, why don't you're permitted here, talking permitted, so if you're unmuted, why don't you review to us what you've written here and anything we should know about it, and then we'll have any questions for you.
Super. Can you hear me?
We can hear you.
Thanks, Glenn, and good evening to everybody. Again, Nick Cracknell for the record, 13 Picard in Amesbury. I am the project coordinator for this property at an application at 344 Merrimack Street in Newburyport, and the owners are Sam and Michelle Kimball, and Brad Kutcher is the applicant, I guess, in front of the planning board with Sam and Michelle seeking a 6C special permit to convert the Levy Car House, which is currently a two-family condominium setup or arrangement in that house that you see on the screen. That will be converted back into a single family, and a new single family house would be constructed at the far in the back of the lot along Union Place, as shown in the application presented last meeting and discussed at the site visit last weekend. So all I want to do tonight, as you are hoping, is focus in on the byproduct of our site visit, which I think was really informative for all of us and very helpful to have not just a majority of members from the Historic Commission attend that site walk, but also at least 3, I don't know how many members are in the Newburyport Preservation Trust, but both Linda, Stephanie, and Tom Coulter John were present to offer their feedback and helpful suggestions. So hopefully I've incorporated the best of everybody's suggestions. I think I've incorporated everything that came out of these informal conversations we had at the site visit. So it's essentially the revised restoration plan is how I characterize this document. It goes over 10 sort of elements to the actual structure, the biggest being the window replacement. And there are 9 windows there on the front, and there are 8 on the side on Union Place. This is located on a corner lot, and we are proposing to replace all 17 of those windows with a Green Mountain double hung simulated divided light wood window that will be field painted with a federal style muntin on the windows, and have the concealed jam liner, so you don't have that vinyl jam liner on the bottom sash, so visible from the street. So that, and the pattern of the grills are shown on both this page and the next page. So we've got 9/6s on the bigger openings at the bottom first floor along Merrimack Street. That repeats itself for the most part when you go around the corner and look at the next image. But before we do that, the top 5 windows on the image you see on the screen, for any of you, I know Malcolm, you didn't make it, so I'm just going to quickly say the windows on the top, the condo, there's a condo on the left with those 4, I think it's 4, it could be 5 windows, I can't remember. I think the middle one over the door is a wood 2/1 window, and the windows on the left in that image upstairs and down are vinyl replacement windows. So what we're proposing to do is 9/6 double hungs on the first floor and 6/6 double hungs on the second. We're going to take one of those 3 wood windows that could be 100 years old in the upper floors and insert it in one of the older wood 1/1s that are on the second floor over the porch that you can't see in this image just off to the right. So let's go to the next slide, and you'll see the side of the building on Union. Again, those 3 taller windows will be 9/6s. And then the 6/6s to the left. These openings are not, especially on Union Place, they're not all original, and they're not all dimensioned the same as the front of the house. So these will be custom fit windows to fit in those openings. And we've got that modern, it's probably an awning window up there now with just a single pane. We're going to do a 2/2 awning window on the second floor, and then there'll be a 4/4 in that thin, longer window, and then a 6/6. So it's a bit of a hodgepodge today. We're going to try and smooth it out with the muntin pattern, but it's still going to have some noticeable differences than what was there originally in 1805 or whenever the addition was added behind the main structure. So that was a summary of the biggest purpose of the site visit, which was really to understand these window openings and what we were proposing to do with them.
Excuse me, Nick, quick question.
Yep.
The overall massing here that we're looking at on that Union Place side, so there aren't any structural changes happening here, right? Just
Correct.
fenestration. Okay, thank you.
Yep. All right, so let's go to the second. It speeds up here, I think. The next page has the window casing. Obviously, these windows are pretty unique with those shoulders at the top and the bead mold going around the edge of the window. There are storm windows on here. There won't be storm windows on the new Green Mountain windows. We're going to preserve whatever can be preserved here in the casing trim. Obviously, the sills, what can't be preserved will be repaired to be preserved. And there probably are a few spots we'll need to replace in kind, areas that aren't restorable, but that's sort of the order of operations and for all the window casings and trim. So we'll go to the next sheet. This is not the door of the house. The door of the house is an arts and crafts door. It's a fine door, but it doesn't fit the late Georgian, early federal period of the house from 1805. So what we're going to be doing is replacing the front door with something appropriate to the federal period, this being a facsimile thereof. And it's the door again, not the door surround or anything. This is a different house. I think I made that clear in the notes, but that's the style, and the lighting in the mailbox again will all be, and any door knocker will be consistent with that federal period. Next sheet, and stop me at any point if there's questions moving through these building elements. Obviously, a key character defining piece of this house is that massive central chimney. It's parged. We're not proposing to take the parging off. We're going to repair it and probably either reparge it or repair where it needs repairing. I don't think there's a proposal to paint it, but if somebody felt that would be good, we'd be open to that idea. We'll make sure the flashing is good. The roof isn't that old, so it was probably taken care of. But most importantly, what came out of the site visit was a suggestion from the Newburyport Preservation Trust, and I'm sure all of us would suggest it. They just had the gumption to do it, which is, it would be really great in this project if we could insert in the preservation restriction, which is almost always limited to the exterior of the structure. We were asked, would we consider extending the preservation restriction inside the structure for the chimney all the way to the basement? So it's not ever removed and this thing somehow supported in the attic, because it is jurisdictional, what you see on the screen, but it's everything underneath it that not only holds the house together, but it's really the essence of the house. And we're in full support of that. It was easy to sell me. I deal with this in Portsmouth every day, and it's hard to see these interior chimneys removed. And surprisingly, they do get removed even when they're this big, and people will try and support what's on the roof in order to get it out of the house. So we're proposing in the revised PR, which you don't have in front of you. The purpose tonight is to go through this, make sure we have agreement on these items. And then what we'll do is in the next week, update the PR to reflect this document, maybe insert it as an exhibit. I'll let Paul Gagliardi, the attorney, figure out how to enumerate this, memorialize it. But the idea is we will go inside the house and preserve the existing fireplaces and chimney to the basement. So that's a substantive change that probably wouldn't have happened had we not had the site visit and the opportunity to exchange ideas. So I'm appreciative of that. Next sheet. We were originally going to replace those 3 concrete sections of the sidewalk that was all concrete before the city replaced it along Merrimack Street. And obviously Sam and Michelle contributed to upgrade to the brick. But these 3 panels were left. They're on their property, and we do have a little plaque in the sidewalk that commemorates it as a WPA project, one of the Cashman brothers' many sidewalks throughout the area. So we've changed our mind and want to leave those 3 concrete sections in place and simply replace the concrete step with a granite step. So that's all that's going to happen in respect to this section, is replacement of the concrete step with granite, with a smooth face, not a heavy rock face, to match again the period. Okay, stop me again at any point. Let's go to the next one if we're good. The shutters. This is a facsimile of the shutters. It's here just to make clear we're going to make these shutters operable. They'll have pintles and dogs. They'll be wood. They'll be louvered. And if they were closed, which they rarely will be, they would cover the whole window. So there's nothing decorative about them or fake. And they're only going to be on the Merrimack Street facade with I believe the 9 windows. But I think it'll look fantastic. And there were shutters in some of the early photographs of the house. Then on the bottom of that sheet, I think this is really going to pop. There's aluminum gutters and downspouts on the structure now. We're proposing to replace them with the half-round copper gutters and the full round downspouts. So it's going to look fantastic when you go past this property with the shutters and all the pieces here. Next page, we talk about the soffit trim and clapboards. We're going to again preserve, repair, and replace in kind in that order as we move from the soffit to the mudboard. And as many of you noticed when we were out there, the clapboards are scarf jointed. We'll repeat that pattern when we have to replace any of the clapboards that can't be restored or repaired. We will preserve, you can barely see it in that image, but there is like a crown molding up in the soffit. We're going to again preserve, repair, or replace in kind that crown molding. So we'll maintain that feature when the work is done. And then I think just the last sheet, the last 2 pieces are the fence and the shed. The fence, there's that well characterized upside down fence That's probably like a 10-foot wall when you're standing on Union Place, because it seems to be like 7 feet and it's sitting 2 or 3 feet above grade. So we felt like a 4-foot simple wood privacy fence would probably suffice to give anybody in the backyard a reasonable degree. And again, this isn't down the whole run, it's just to replace the fence that's there. So I can't tell you how many feet it is, but I think it's only a couple of sections, at most 20 feet, and it's probably 16. It would be limited to the 4 feet because again, it's at least 2 feet above grade. So you'd have to be 7 feet tall to look over it from Union Places, and it slopes down obviously towards the river. So that's the proposal for the fence replacement. And then obviously we all stuck our heads in that open door to see this shed is, in need of removal. And that's part of our application first to the ZBA and then to the planning board, is that we'd remove this and replace it with grass. So there wouldn't be another structure in that location. The parking would still be in front of it. The owners may in the future want to do a garage in that area, but they would need to seek dimensional relief, at least as the code's written now, for coverage. So there's no intention for a garage to be added behind this building other than the one associated with the second house that's been approved. So I think that covers, there was a question on the way out of the sidewalk. That was a good one, especially looking, I think, next door at the property that has been completed as a 6C with a preservation restriction on 242. There was some question and concern about the timing of these restoration elements and, how long is it going to, what's the sequence? And our intention is to make those repairs, replacements, or everything in this restoration plan to be ongoing sort of simultaneous with the construction of the house, rather than have the house built and sold and then focus on the restoration plan. So I haven't nailed down an exact timeline. We'll do that with you maybe tonight. And I think it's going to take me time to talk to Brad and Sam. But I would think if we had at least 12 months from when the final PR, when the PR is recorded, if we had 12 months, that would give us ample time for both pieces of this project, the new house and the old house, to be completed. And maybe another backstop, just as an idea to float, is that prior to an occupancy permit being issued or something for the new house, the work is substantially complete on the old house, something like that. I don't want to hold Brad up. Brad's going to be doing the work most likely on both buildings, so that shouldn't be a problem. But in fairness to Brad and Sam, I'd like to firm that up for our subsequent meeting with you on the 25th, hopefully in 2 weeks. If we have agreement on this, we'll spend the week in embedding this into the PR. We'll add those exhibits that aren't added, even though we certainly submitted the baseline documentation, and we'll add the deed. My inclination is I'm going to talk to Paul and Brad, but removing the word significantly, I think we can do that. I know that was raised at the last meeting. I've reread the document to see where that might be a tension point. I don't see why we need it. I think realistically, what needs to be in the PR is some accommodation for some landscaping, so there isn't some crazy conversation down the road about putting in whatever gets planted in front of the house. That's certainly not a 15-foot arborvitae, but if there was a bush planted in the front, it would partially obscure a basement window or some of the foundation. As it does now, we're going to be removing maybe some of that vegetation that's overgrown. We'd like to be able to replace it and not have language in the PR that says you can't obscure anything along the street frontage. That obviously landscaping could be debated. So anyway, I think we'll take out, my sense is we'll take out the significantly and maybe insert a sentence that allows for limited landscaping of a certain height along the planting strip on both streets that exist today with landscaping in it. So I'll end there, but that I think is a summary. If I've missed something, let me know. Did you shut me off?
No, I shut myself off.
Okay.
Sorry about that.
Yeah.
Just give me 1 second here, Nick. I just want to make a note about your comment about the landscaping. Typically, that's a, typically that's an area where there's a certain amount of flexibility. The main thing is, as I think to avoid obscuring the building. But
Correct.
and we've had cases in the past where I can think of more than one where there was a PR, so they came. It was either they weren't sure or they felt that this was something that needed to be approved, and in all the cases I can remember, let me see if I'm telling a lie there. I'm pretty sure all the cases I can recall, they were the shrubbery that they wanted to do was modest and sensible, and it was approved, and they went ahead with it. So I'm sure we can work that out. So I think I just want to make sure I understand you correctly. So let me repeat back what I took away, Nick, and that's that you summarized and gathered up the best of the suggestions from the site visit. You have this revised restoration plan. So first of all, thank you for doing that. It's really helpful, especially illustrated as it is. And then we know it's not yet in the PR, so you are looking for the board to give you the okay or not, but basically, hopefully, we'll to give you feedback that either it's okay as is or you need change XYZ, so that you can then go ahead and finalize the preservation restriction. Is that basically?
No, that's a good summary. I think unless somebody objects to it, and it's quite possible somebody might, my head says this gets packaged as Exhibit D, and finds its way into the back of the PR. But somebody might say, who's smarter than me, this is a restoration plan. It doesn't need to be in the PR. But we obviously want these things pre-approved. So my inclination is to stick it in there, whether it's a separate document or Exhibit D doesn't matter to me. It just, the purpose is they kind of go together. So you guys know what's happening out there and when it's happening. And I will include in the final either Exhibit D or the supplemental document, which will be the same thing. I will include a couple of lines outlining the suggested timeline. So
good.
Yeah.
And your inclination is correct, and I agree that we should do it that way, Nick. Because in fact, the next one we'll be talking about on Water Street is very similar. There was a PR being imposed on the property or being set up, and the property as it existed was going to be changed, so that had to be accommodated into the context of the PR, and it was an exhibit pretty much exactly as you just described. So and I think having that collected as its separate exhibit and just referred to exhibit whatever in the body of the PR is a sensible way to do it. It keeps the PR kind of readable and clean, and I think it'll be easier to get it approved by both locally and with Mass Historic. So I think that's the way to go. So thank you, Mr. Cracknell. Let me turn to my fellow commissioners, see if anyone has a question or comment or would like to say something about this revised plan. Most of you were there. I don't think Mark was there, but I know Joe was there and Chris, Andrew was there. So, folks, any comments? Do you like this revised plan?
Yeah, Glenn, this is Chris. I think it looks great.
Yep.
Okay, and Joe, I see your hand went up. Thank you, Chris. Did you want to comment, Joe?
Yeah, this seems to be an accurate documenting of what we saw and discussed on site. As far as I can tell, all the points that are covered here, and I find it acceptable.
Yeah, I thought so too. But put it this way. I don't think I need to go through a straw poll first. Would anyone care to make a motion? Well, the motion would be that, let me think about this for just a second. We don't have a formal final draft PR so we're not approving the draft PR. So this motion would be to approve the revised, what do you call revised restoration plan?
Yep.
So that it may be included, so that may be incorporated into the preservation restriction. Does that sound reasonable?
That's good for me, but you're probably not asking me.
You're right. If there's general agreement on that, would someone care to make that motion? You can just say, you make that motion, I'll reread it so everyone's clear on it.
So
I'd
move.
make the motion what you just said.
Okay, I think both Andrew and Mark. I'll put Andrew as the mover, and Mark, if that was you,
Yes.
I'll call you. Say you're the second, and I'll just make sure we all understand. This motion is a yay vote or a yes vote is that you are in approval of the revised restoration plan, so that the applicant can go back and incorporate it into the final draft preservation restriction, which we can then come back before us for final approval. Okay, so that's what this current vote is. So, Mr. Bernhardt, your vote?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. Malcolm, I see you're back. If you're locally muted, if you can unmute yourself, we'd love to hear your vote on this. While we're waiting for Malcolm, Chris Fay.
Yes.
I'm sorry, Mark Syndrome.
Yes.
Okay, Joe Morgan.
Yes, with a question.
Okay, well, finish the voting. Chair votes yes. Well, what is technically, probably should have taken the question before the vote, but anyway, what's your question, Joe? Maybe we can do it ex post facto here.
Well, the PR usually includes a description of the property, which is documented through the baseline documentation, which will
Correct.
be Exhibit B. So presumably everything that we've just voted yay on will be included as part of Exhibit B and will define the baseline documentation.
Well, okay, this is, let me tell you how I understand it, and see if that makes sense. The baseline documentation normally, well, first of all, not usually, it always is part of the PR. So you're absolutely right about that. The PR has to have baseline documentation. That documents the existing condition. Now, in a case like this, where we're going to change the existing condition, and that's been, to use Nick's phrase, pre-approved, that's going to be incorporated into the baseline documentation only, like in the actual PR, it'll say something like, exhibit whatever letter it ends up being, outlines specific changes that are planned to be made to the edifice, to the structure, and thereby incorporated, and from once those changes have been made, that will be the baseline that will sort of become the baseline. It's a little
I think that's very confusing.
It is.
I had understood when I did the PR for the library that I was documenting existing conditions. Now, even though
Correct.
they were, I think you may be right that those were alternatively they were called baseline conditions, but that is confusing because the baseline conditions would imply, and this is what I was understanding from our discussion at the last meeting, was that we would be documenting these changes as we have negotiated them, and that they would become the baseline that then becomes the actual scope to be preserved through the covenants of the PR. So I think it's very confusing, and I think we should get clarification on that, on just what baseline means here.
Yeah. Okay. And I'm not sure if Caitlin, do you have any feeling on that? I mean, we're sort of both right. We're sort of saying the same thing, but I think where your concern boils down to the confusion aspect, because you're right, Joe. If the baseline is this, but what you're going to preserve is that, it can be confusing, and it's kind of, you can't put the cart before the horse, so to speak, and somehow document the baseline changes, way down the road after the whole draft PR is, been written and all that, because they need that in order to get started. So typically, and this may become clearer when we talk about 90 Water Street in just a minute. And I know Attorney Mead is, I believe, is here tonight to talk about that. And in fact, I see her hand is up. Attorney Mead, did you want to comment on this particular issue?
If maybe I could provide some clarity for the process, Mr. Chair.
Okay.
So
yeah, if it's specific to this issue, we're talking about how to incorporate the, So why don't you go ahead?
And this is the way the board has done it for the house next door, for the Kelly School, and a couple of other projects, Unitarian Church. So you're both kind of right. The baseline documentation is as it exists today. And then there's an additional exhibit called the Grantor's Proposed and Approved Changes. So in the Kelly School, it was the approved actual line drawings. In the Unitarian Church, it was, everything was just preserved, so there were no changes in that. But so you attach the plans that have been approved so that it's clear what the changes are going to be. In this instance, it may be these photographs or whatever it is that you choose, but the baseline is the existing conditions. And then there's a different exhibit that is the approved conditions.
Thank you. And that's pretty much how I understood it. So thank you, Attorney Mead. Does that help at all?
Thank you indeed. That clarifies. And I believe Nick mentioned that the proposed alterations would be Exhibit D as in dog, maybe? It's a different exhibit.
Yeah, that document that's on the screen would be as Lisa just laid out from the other projects. Maybe it'll be termed the grantor's proposed and granted changes. And the baseline, everybody I hope has the baseline documentation. We submitted it at the beginning. And I think I pulled it up at the last meeting, but the PR has a slot for it under Exhibit B, but it's a separate document that was submitted with all the baseline information of what's out there, the documentation. And we didn't submit the deed. We'll have the deed, and this would be Exhibit D, and we'll reference it in the PR as being, as Lisa laid out, the grantor's proposed and granted changes or something thereof. But I think that is the right way to do this, because at the time of recording this, none of this will be completed. So the baseline documentation is what's on the ground today and at the time of recordation.
Right.
Makes sense. Thank you.
Yeah, and thanks, Joe, for bringing that up, because it can be a bit confusing, but I think it sounds like we're all on the same page here. All right, so Mr. Cracknell, to wrap this up for you for tonight, it sounds like you are going to work with your people writing the actual PR to do that incorporation of which we just spoke. Correct.
Exactly. And we'll plan on submitting that at the end of next week. So you have it at least a week in advance of the next meeting. Okay. I don't think there'll be any surprises beyond what we've discussed. And I just want to end by thanking everybody for coming out to the site, and maybe not in particular, but I think it was very helpful to all of us to have Tom, Linda, and Stephanie at the site. And even Patricia was there, a former member of the Historic Commission. And I want everybody to know that's there, that this document, I circulated it all this week to the 3 members of the Preservation Trust that were present, and they reviewed it. I got a few edits that I'm going to add that I discussed here, like that crown molding piece and the trim and soffit. I'm going to insert that language. Tom thought that should be called out, just to be clear. But I'm under the impression from my correspondence with Linda, Steph, and Tom that they're all in support of this document as presented tonight. So I want to point that out so they get credit.
And you'll be back on the 26th, is that?
Yeah, the goal would be to get here on the 26th for hopefully a vote on the final draft. As I understand it, what you vote on is a final draft with the NHC being coming back before it's final.
Yeah, should be right. Final draft with all the various exhibits and all complete. Yep. One quick comment for you, sir, is that if it turns out you need to try to reproduce some of that molding because it's rotted or something, I can give you the name of a guy in Seabrook with a very extensive wood milling,
capability. Yep.
Yeah, and he's got a lot of older and antique shapes that he can do. So
excellent.
Yeah. Okay.
Thanks, man. Thanks, everybody. I appreciate it.
You're welcome, Mr. Cracknell. Thank you very much. See you in a couple of weeks if all goes well. Final item on the agenda at 90 Water Street. You just heard the voice of Attorney Mead a few moments ago. She is representing the applicant on this. Ms. Mead, why don't you, I think you're probably still unmuted. Let's see. Yeah, you are. So why don't you briefly, and thank you for your memo, by the way. I did have a chance to look at your most recent memo, kind of outlining the history of this. Do you want to just briefly summarize that for us?
Sure. Thank you, Mr. Chair and members of the commission. And George Hazeltine, who's the owner of the property, is with me here this evening. So I look back at the minutes from 2016 because I thought, Chair, that you had just started at that time, but the minutes reflect that not the only person that is here that was on the commission at the time was Malcolm. And so Malcolm was present at the meeting, as was Sarah White and Ned McGrath. So for those of you who don't know, in 2016, George bought this property, and it was a two-family, but we discovered in our research that the two-family use had not been properly permitted. So we worked with the zoning board, we worked with Sarah White, the chair of the commission at the time, and we said, look, we want to continue it as a two-family use. It's been that way. That would require a variance. And what would be the public benefit? Well, it's worker housing along Water Street. There's a line of houses along there that are the same size. At the time, if you could go up to slide 2, Caitlin, or down to slide 2. At the time, this is what it looked like. You see the windows on the bottom. And so we said, look, what if we restore the windows the way they should be in the front, so that front facade is the same. There was a small one-story addition put on the back of this through a special permit process. And then we agreed not to change the roof line. That top line there, that gable, is actually just a parapet. The roof is actually a flat roof. And so if we agree to do those things, would the commission be willing to hold a preservation restriction, mostly because it's just representative of kind of simple architecture along Water Street. So we met with the commission in May. Sarah actually took a site visit. I found some old emails from her where she can confirm that to the Zoning Board of Appeals, took a site visit. She agreed that it would be worthy of the commission holding a restriction. The commission made that recommendation to the Zoning Board of Appeals. The Zoning Board granted the variance to allow it to be continued to be used as a two-family, along with a special permit for nonconformities, which allowed the addition of the small one-story addition on the back. And then the deal was to, change the windows out. If you could go to the next slide, Caitlin, please. And so here, the drawing on the top is the actual rendering of what it was going to look like. And the photograph in the bottom is from the assessor's records. And that actually is what it looks like today. And everything was done exactly the way it was supposed to have been done. And so over the years, unlike the good process that the commission has today, the Historic Commission wasn't staffed at the time. Sarah did a lot of the work herself, as the chair and Malcolm know, and she was working or going to work on this preservation restriction with me. I provided it a number of times to the city and requested some assistance and review. It didn't work out so well. And 2 years ago in 2020, we went back at it. Caitlin reminded me about it in 2020. We went back at it again. And then given everything that happened with COVID, it kind of fell off again. And so more recently, I picked it up at my client's request to try to wrap it up and really close this out. And so what you have before you this evening is the preservation restriction agreement. And this house did not have a Form B on it, so we created a draft Form B. We put together the description of the property, the description of the area. This preservation restriction is to be held locally, and because Mass Historic is not going to hold this restriction given the quote unremarkability of the structure, if you will. But so what we did is something that we've done with a couple of other restrictions that the commission has held locally, and that is that we have it run with the land, and we do say that it's going to run in perpetuity, but then we give the commission or the city the ability to re-record or extend the restriction to confirm that it will run in perpetuity because Mass Historic won't sign off on it. So that's we added that in it. Otherwise, it is the same preservation restriction that you typically see. And it has the description of the property. It has the assessor's map. It has a draft Form B in here. It also has the photographic documentation that existed prior to the work being done. And then it has the quote grantor's work also and the restriction guidelines. And so we're trying to tie this up, if you will, and complete this so that it is done. And we're requesting the commission's approval of the restriction so we can send it off to the city council to get it approved and take care of it.
Okay, thank you, Attorney Mead. So let me first turn to my brethren, and while I'm doing that, I'll comment that I think you guys did a good job putting together the PR. I did look it over pretty carefully and didn't see anything out of the usual. Looked fine. It was interesting that in that little appendix on the end that had the conditions that the NHC imposed at the time. One thing that will need to be corrected is the spelling of my name. There are two N's in Glenn.
Sorry, Glenn.
Okay.
I found a couple of other typos too. So.
Okay. I will try not to take it personally. Any comment from? I do have one other question, but I'll hold off for just a minute. Any of my fellow commissioners have a question or comment on the PR? Hopefully, you've had a chance to look at it. I'll think it over for a minute. While you're thinking, I'll point out one thing that this may come as a surprise to you, Attorney Mead. If you look at that, that very end of the PR where it has those the conditions that were imposed by the NHC, it talks on the front elevation. I'm going to quote from it here. Quote, on the front elevation, Water Street or North, close paren, the two existing first floor windows shall be replaced with windows that match those of the second floor front elevation in size, dimension, mountain pattern, sash, and detail. The replacement windows shall be wood or aluminum clad wood and shall be either true divided light or simulated divided light. And this now comes the important part. If the latter, dark spaces shall be used between the glass and muntins shall be applied to the exterior portions of the sash. Light patterning shall be 2/1. So the patterning is correct. I'm not sure about the wood or aluminum clad wood. I wonder if you know what that is. I'm not sure if those details were met, and it was particularly the spacer between the glass. When I looked at it this morning, I didn't see any spacer. Are you at all familiar with this, Attorney Mead, or am I throwing you a curveball here?
No, it's funny that you said that because I just wanted to confirm with George ahead of time, and he sent me actually a piece out of the order. So it does have, they are simulated divided light, and they are, hang on a minute, he just got done telling me this. They have the spacer bars in the middle, and they are, I believe they're aluminum clad. George is on. I don't know, George, if you can just confirm that they're aluminum clad or are they wood?
Yeah, I don't think they're wood, but yeah.
Can you hear me?
Yeah, we can hear you now. Speak up a little bit. You're a little soft.
Can you hear me now?
Yep, we can.
Okay, these are, I believe these are aluminum clad or they're wood, but I'm pretty sure they're aluminum clad because I know that I had to go through, at the time, a window company that provided aluminum clad. So I believe that they are aluminum clad.
Okay, and it's your understanding that they do have, I know they have the exterior applied kind of, muntin bars, and I'm not sure what's on the inside, but, and so you build, it's your understanding that they do have a spacer. It was kind of hard to see because it was a screen.
That's how we ordered it, and there is a spacer in between. There's an interior, there's an SDL in the interior, the exterior, and there's a spacer bar in the middle.
Okay. Okay. All right. Very good. That was the only real question I had. So panelists, my fellow commissioners, does anyone have comment? If not, we can hear a motion to approve this draft PR so we can get it, moving through the process of getting it finalized. The motion would be to approve the draft PR with, well, actually, you said you had some other typos and things, Attorney Mead, is that correct?
Yeah, actually, one I just saw that I didn't. So it's, trust is spelled incorrectly on the first line. Your name is spelled incorrectly, and then trustee under George is also, I'm missing the E on trustee. So those minor changes, and then I would send it off to Caitlin.
Okay. Well, what we can do, so we can, I think if the changes are of that nature, if the board is happy with the overall shape of it, barring minor typos, what we can do is I will review it again before signing it, because it does require my signature. So I'll give it the old fine-tooth comb treatment again to check that. Other than that, if you're happy with this preservation restriction, we can hear a motion to approve the draft subject to final review of the final version.
Chair Richards, this is Joe. Can I ask a question, please?
Yes, you may.
I hate to burden everyone, but last week I stepped through my understanding of why we were reviewing a preservation restriction for 344.
Right.
Merrimack, and I'd like to do that here too. I'd like there to be clarity as to why we are looking at these documents. And I think we understand that there's a public benefit aspect to the zoning decision on 344. There are certain conditions and covenants, and likewise there are those same covenants here, but it's something else triggers it. This was not a 6C. This was some other zoning decision. Apparently there was an exchange for grandfathering an existing use in this residential building. I don't know if it was the zoning board or the building inspector. Someone decided that, a good tit for tat here would be let's ask for preservation restriction. And so my question is, well, what is in and of itself? What is the public benefit of having a preservation restriction on a building that has no Form B and is indicated as a minor contributing property on the district data sheets? And then what other public benefits are associated with holding a preservation restriction on this property? I think it would be really nice to have clarity on that for all of us so that we can understand under what other ordinance conditions we may be seeing further preservation restrictions in the future that are not 6C.
Well, Joe, as a former president used to say, I feel your pain. meaning that was pretty much
No,
the
my
question.
my pain is just one born of ignorance. So I'm just
No,
trying to
no,
see if anyone can fill that that gap.
Yeah, well, I had the same issue and I spoke to Caitlin about this, and that's why we specifically asked Attorney Mead to provide a little bit more background. And so let me correct me if I'm wrong, Attorney Mead. Well, first of all, were you there back in 2016 for the original processing of this?
Absolutely.
Okay. So do you know I have two questions. Let me just throw the two questions at you, and then you can, I'd like to hear your answers. One is, do you know whose idea this was, as Joe was putting it? And B, do I understand correctly that the regulations have changed? So it may have been something that seemed like a good idea then, but this is not likely to happen again because the regulations have changed.
So I think that there are, well, I don't know what regulations you're referring to, but let me tell you how.
Whatever.
How let me tell you how it came to be.
Okay.
So George was looking at this property. He was going to buy it, and he wanted to do renovations to it, and it had been a two-family for a while, which is fine. The two-family use is fine, but it didn't have a special permit as part of this two-family use, and it also then therefore didn't meet the dimensional requirements. And so the question was, because it had been a two-family for a while, and there in fact were tenants in it, how do we make it right, and what benefit would the city get if it were made right, so to speak, to have the proper permits? And so because of this paragraph, Sarah did review. This is the second whereas clause, and I think I alluded to it. We had Sarah over to the building to say, look at this, right? There's obviously these windows aren't correct here. There is some benefit to the city to continue this streetscape and the size and nature of these buildings that were home to factory workers and tradespeople and things like that. And they benefit the streetscape and the historical integrity and fabric of the community. And she agreed. And then we took it to the commission, and the commission agreed that yes, it may not be, a major contributing building in and of itself, but it's part of a better fabric or a streetscape. And they agreed that would be beneficial to the city to have a preservation restriction on this building, which at the time, I don't believe in 2016, we had the DCOD. So that was not controlling, right? So there was a benefit in 2016 to put preservation restrictions on buildings like this. And I believe that was, I can't speak for the commission, but they voted, and the minutes aren't particularly revealing. I went back to the minutes, but they voted to do it. And there is a pretty detailed email that Sarah sent to Kate, to Catherine, and to Ed Ramsell at the time, talking about the preservation restriction and the conditions. So that's kind of the genesis of it. And that's why we have this preservation restriction. It was kind of a whole set of the permitting at the time. And so, the city or you don't have to have a requirement to have a preservation restriction or, a written quid pro quo, so to speak, like 6C. There are other reasons to have preservation restrictions. And anyway, this is how that was the genesis of it.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Well, your hand is still up, Mr. Morgan. Does that answer your question more or less, kind of, sort of?
Yes, it does. And it sounds like there is no ordinance language that specifically triggered this instance of the preservation restriction. It was a gesture to the architectural character of the streetscape, and it was decided that this would be of public benefit. But there was no ordinance specifically that required it in order to continue or to grandfather the existing use, the residential use of the two-family occupancies. That's what I'm understanding.
Yeah, no ordinance required it. It was part of the special permit variance that was granted. And then this preservation restriction. That's kind of the regulatory framework, if you will.
Okay. All right. That helps. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Joe. Yeah, and you're not alone in finding that it's like kind of a head scratcher, that whole thing. Okay, well, I think it's in both the applicants and the city's interest to get this resolved. Would anyone care to make a motion to approve this draft preservation restriction subject to a second final review of the version with the minor corrections discussed?
Glenn, this is Chris. I'd like to
Yes.
make a motion that we approve the draft of this preservation restriction,
Okay.
subject to the minor revisions in your approval.
Okay, thank you, Chris. Is there a second?
This is Andrew. I second the motion.
Okay, thank you, Andrew. Okay, so Andrew Bernhardt, your vote on this would be?
Yes.
Okay. See, Malcolm is still with us, but we haven't been able to hear your audio, Malcolm, so we may or may not.
Can you hear me now?
Oh, yeah, I hear you. You a yes vote on this?
Yeah, I'm a yes vote.
And once we finish voting, I may come back to you for something. Mark Syndrome?
Yes.
Christopher Fay?
Yes.
Joe Morgan?
Yes.
And chair is okay too. Malcolm, now that we can hear you, do you have any recollection of what, because you were on the commission back when this was done. Do you remember it at all? A no is okay.
I think I don't really remember, but I think any preservation restriction on any building in the city, probably in the city's best interest.
Potentially, anyway. All right. Well, I want to move on because it's getting late. Thank you, Attorney Mead. So why don't you get your final version to Caitlin, and she'll coordinate with me to get that approved and get the ball rolling through the various approval signatures that it requires from the city. Okay.
Thank you very much, Chair and members of the commission. We appreciate it.
Okay. Thank
you
you.
very much.
Okay, just a few last final items. We need to approve the minutes. Hopefully you've had a chance to read them. Thank you, Joy, for sending those out. These are the minutes from, I believe, 4/28. Is there a motion to approve those?
Motion to approve, Andrew.
Thank you, Andrew. Second?
Second, this is Joe.
Yep, thank you, Joe. Okay, Andrew, your vote?
Yes.
Okay, Malcolm? Oh, I don't think you were here last week for that,
Right,
Malcolm.
I don't think it was.
Yeah, so we'll abstain you. Mark Syndrome, you were out as well, right?
Yes, but I seem to be present on the minutes.
Okay, well,
I hope that was.
Just on that one. You were just added on that one list of people.
Okay. Well, I was not there, so I can't.
Okay,
vote.
yep, we'll abstain you. Christopher Fay?
Yes.
Okay, Joe Morgan?
Yes.
Okay, and that just squeaks us through with the chair's yes vote. We have 4 affirmatives, which is enough to pass. Updates from the chair are only that, please, if you think you know anyone who might be willing to serve with us, talk to them. We have a vacancy and 2 alternate posts vacant, so let's try to get them filled so we don't have to perspire too much. It's hard to have perfect attendance. People have to miss meetings occasionally. It'd be nice to have a full board so we don't have any problems having a quorum. Is there a motion to adjourn?
So move.
No? Okay, I think that was Mark.
Yep.
Okay.
Malcolm.
Oh, it was Malcolm.
There was
Okay,
Malcolm.
sorry. Malcolm, and is there a second?
I'll second.
Okay, I heard Chris first. Okay, Mr. Bernhardt, yay
Yes.
to adjourn. Okay, Malcolm.
Yep.
Okay, Mark Syndrome.
Yes.
Okay, Chris Fay.
Yes.
Thank you. Joe Morgan.
Yes.
Thank you. And the chair is also in the affirmative. So I can say good night and thank you once again for your time and attention. Good questions, good discussion. Yep. Bye, everybody, and have a good evening.
Right.
Thank you, Chair.
Good night.
Gentlemen.
Thank you all. Good night.
Okay. Good night.
Good night.